G'day there guys, Marky here, and welcome back to another episode of r/Am I the Asshole? With that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chug a prawn of the Barbie, and let's get right into it. Am I the asshole for keeping a massive secret from my parents? So my parents, female 66 and male 70, and I, female 32, have had a bit of a strained relationship since I was young. My sister was always favored, while I was treated as the maid, which is why I left home as soon as I could. Over the years, our relationship has had its ups and downs, but I would never describe our family dynamics as being particularly normal or healthy. I married my husband, male 36, when I was 23, and my parents just about hit the roof. They have never really taken a shining to him and have threatened to disown me if I went through with the marriage. When he and I would visit their home, he would be subject to the same expectations as I am, whereas my sister gets to put her feet up and relax. Needless to say, my husband does not hold my parents in particularly high regard. My parents emigrated overseas about 10 years ago, and my husband and I have only seen them 3 times in person since. We do chat over FaceTime and Zoom semi-regularly, but the relationships all function better if we aren't breathing down each other's necks. Recently, my husband and I bought our first house, and we are over the moon. We plan on growing our family, and we now have the space and the garden to do so. I am beyond thrilled. My parents are kept on a strict information diet, and we did not tell them that we had bought, mostly because they are renting a storage unit not far from us, and we did not want the drama of my parents wanting, expecting, to store all of their furniture in our new house. We also did not tell them that our new house is much more spacious than our old place. As far as my parents are aware, we just moved because it's closer to my husband's job. Unbeknownst to me, my parents have been in the country for about a month and ran into a childhood friend, Dee, female 34 of mine, yesterday. Dee told them that I had invited her to coffee today, and it would be so lovely if they came with her, and surprised me. Dee had no way of knowing that I had not told my parents about the spacious new house until they all walked through the front door, and my mum lost her mind at me. The main points from my mum's yelling was that our relationship has been good recently, so how could I have kept this secret from them? My husband and I was selfish to have all this space, with no regard for the fact that they are renting a storage unit, and that my parents are hurt that I don't include them in all parts of my life. Unfortunately, my husband arrived home not long after the tirade started, and he told them to stop making a scene under his roof. That is when the other shoe dropped that we have bought instead of rented. Ultimately, my parents left after telling me that a true daughter would never keep secrets like this, and I am left feeling like everything could have been avoided if we had told them from the beginning. To be frank though, who's Frank, I honestly never expected them in my house. They do not have the address, and they live overseas. Edit to clarify, my husband and I are currently 36 and 32 respectively. I was 23 when we were married, and he was 27. OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. 1. I kept a pretty big secret from my parents about my life, and 2. I expected the worst from my parents, expecting them to want me to store their stuff without giving them the benefit of the doubt. And now in the comments, their reaction demonstrated that your fears were justified. Rather than being happy for you, they were miserable for themselves. Ugh, not the asshole. The hypocrisy of, our relationship has been good recently, so how could I have kept this secret from them? From the person who was in town for a month without telling OP is particularly rich, right? And their main complaint was that they could have been using their daughter's house for storage all of that time. It is so absurd. They were put out that she had not made herself available for them to exploit the way they had grown accustomed to doing while she was younger. Therefore, she has betrayed their trust, and yet they couldn't be bothered to tell her they were in town for a month, just in case she hadn't asked for a few hours of their time. Not the asshole. Why do I have a feeling that OP's parents are going to show up with a U-Haul van, demanding to use her house as free storage? It's a really weird twist of fate that occurred and made them know about the house. You decide what information you share with who, and it's your house, so your rules. How could I have kept this secret from them? My husband and I were selfish to have all this space with no regard for the fact that they are renting a storage unit. They were in the country for a month and didn't tell you. It shows how they're interested in your life. Also, exactly like you predicted, they want to use your house as a storage unit. Not the asshole. The reason your relationship with your parents has been so much better recently is because you have boundaries on what information you share with them due to their behavior. Share what you're comfortable with, which might be very little. Low or no contact with your parents is also totally acceptable. If your parents want to be a part of your life, they have to accept that you only share what you are comfortable with. And now on to the update. First and foremost, after my husband had practically forced my parents out of the house, he and I sat down and had a bit of a chat about our options moving forward. From his perspective, he has watched me struggle with my parents for years, and he thinks that we have given them more than enough opportunities to behave in a fair and reasonable manner. I said that I had hoped them moving overseas would mean that we could have a relationship on equal terms, rather than them imposing their rules on us, but that has clearly not happened. I also spoke to my husband about my general feeling of abandonment when it comes to my parents, which is why I worked so hard to keep them happy. I've spoken about this quite a lot to my therapist, and I think the time in our lives has come for me to stop trying to force a relationship with toxic people. It is unfair to me, it is unfair to my husband, and it will be unfair to our future family. On that note, we have some very exciting news. I just found out that I'm pregnant. We will wait until I'm 3 months before we start telling people, but I'm so excited that I couldn't resist telling all the kind people who helped me out so much the other day. I also had a bit of a chat to Dee, who was a bit of a deer in the headlights the other day, just to answer some questions that I was asked a few times in the comments. Now, if Dee is a childhood friend, why would she invite your parents to your house? Surely she would know the situation. Answer: Dee and I grew up together, but unfortunately lost touch after high school, and we only recently reconnected, maybe 2 or so years ago, and in that time, I have not really had much to do with my parents. Dee remembers how my parents treated me as a child, and she knows that they now live overseas, but I don't often talk about them. The next question was, why would Dee invite anyone, let alone my parents, to my house? Well, when Dee ran into my parents, they told her that I had already invited them to dinner that same day, but it would be a nice surprise if they showed up early with her. She had no reason to not believe them, and was under the impression that they would be welcome into my home if I'd already invited them. Question: is Dee a busybody or a crap stirrer who intentionally invited your parents, knowing the chaos that would ensue? Well, Dee is one of the sweetest people that I've ever met, and she comes from a very functional and loving family. While she remembers the mistreatment that I endured as a child, she always assumes the best of people, and I figured that for every bad thing she saw, there were also good moments. Dee's biggest sin in life is naivety. The next question was, did I get upset at Dee, and did Dee get caught in the crossfire when my parents arrived? Ever since I was a child, when my parents yell or get generally upset at me, I just shut down. I struggle to even look at them in the eye, let alone get involved in the yelling. When my mum walked through the door and started getting upset, I mostly stood there in silence. Dee stood around in awkward silence, exactly like when we were children, until my husband showed up, and Dee mouthed to me that she was leaving and slipped out the door. She also sent me an apology text that night saying that she had no idea and did not bring them to start a fight. I realize that I need to be a bit stronger when it comes to my parents, and I'm so grateful that my husband always stands up for me against the bullying, which is probably why they don't like him, but it is incredibly difficult for me to say anything to them in those moments. This is something that I'm working on in therapy. The juiciest gossip of all is that my parents were in town for my sister's wedding. My sister and I are not close at all, based entirely on the fact that she loves the attention that my parents give her, and has never once tried to say anything to them about their mistreatment of me. But I didn't even know that she was seeing someone. Anyway, looks like I'm the black sheep in their family, and am not really wanted, but my wonderful husband is all I need. For now, he and I have gone no contact with my parents and my sister, although my sister seems to have imposed that on me anyway, and we will focus on our new baby. I have been planning all the beautiful fruits and veggies that I'll plant in the new garden, and we're thinking about painting the baby's room in a couple of weeks. Dee also dropped off some of her delicious homemade jam, and life goes on. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice and or left a compassionate comment. And now in the comments, as soon as your parents find out about the baby, they are going to absolutely lose their crap. They'll be pounding on your door, demanding access to their grandbaby. They will love bomb the hell out of you until you give them access, and then threaten to sue you for grandparents' rights. You'll get whiplash from all of the back and forth. You'll need to be aware of this and take time to prepare for it. Only tell people you absolutely trust about the pregnancy. If it gets back to your parents, they are gonna go apeshit. I'm so glad that your husband is so supportive and has a shiny spine. I am equally happy to hear that you are working on your issues in therapy. I'm proud of you, OP. What in the world? So it's terrible for OP to not say they moved, but it's completely fine they're in town for her sister's wedding and not even invite her? They're just upset that they can't dump their crap at OP's house instead of paying for storage. They'll say or do what it takes to manipulate OP to get what they want. Hypocrites don't see any barriers to such things. Hell, they did say they had moved. They just didn't say that they bought instead of rented, or that their place was nice. But OP mentioning that her parents thought that they had moved just because the new place was more convenient to her husband's work. The point is that they're supposed to keep them informed when the family didn't even invite them to the wedding or let them know that they were in town. I guess the parents lied and tricked Dee into bringing the house with her. What psychopaths give OP crap for secrets when they'd been in the country for a month to attend her sister's wedding that she wasn't even invited to? Absolute hypocrites. Lamau at the parents with the "I thought we were doing good, why keep the secrets?" You mean like a golden child getting married? Also, OP called it when she said that part of the reason why she didn't tell them space-wise was because of the storage unit. Parents find out, boom, storage unit complaint. Almost like they haven't grown as people at all. And she still questioned if she'd made the right decision. I guess that's what a lifetime of abuse does to a person. That is exactly what a lifetime of abuse will do to a person, especially childhood abuse from parents and guardians. Doesn't even have to be a lifetime. A close relationship with a narcissist will have you questioning yourself almost immediately, and it's scary how hard it can be to find your way back after getting lost in that kind of psychological abuse. Our next post is titled, "My friend seems to enjoy finding ways to humiliate me." They are both 27 female. So I've known my best friend Mary, which is not her real name, for about 7 or 8 years now. I've had her back through tough times, and she's had mine. The rest of this post might make her sound bad, but honestly, she's not a bad person. She's a kind and caring friend. But there is one thing I've noticed that she does a lot lately that I don't understand. She seems to keep finding ways to make me feel humiliated. Recently, I was at her place, and she came out from the bathroom, sighed, and said, "This is awkward, but every time you use my toilet, you pee on the floor. I'm sorry, I didn't want to say, but I'm tired of cleaning it up." I was genuinely shocked and embarrassed, and I believed her. It's not a problem that I've ever had anywhere else, but maybe I was careless, or there's something about her toilet that makes me stand up funny. Next time I used it, I was very careful, and I made sure that I checked the floor after I was done. It was perfectly dry, so I washed my hands and left. 10 minutes later, Mary uses the bathroom, comes out and says, "You peed on the floor again." But I didn't. I checked the floor very thoroughly after I used the toilet. It was dry. I told Mary this, and she shrugged and said, "Okay, if that's what you want to tell yourself." Gaslighting? Do you hear yourself right now? Is that another one of those funny little words you keep making up? If that's what you want to keep telling yourself, then yeah, be my guest. I recently began trying to learn Spanish. I've been working really hard, doing 3 to 4 hours of personal study every night, and attending private lessons. Every time I mentioned something that I learned to Mary, she would correct me. Which was weird because A, her Spanish is the same beginner level as mine, and B, I know just enough to be able to tell her that she's usually wrong. But I just let it go and figured maybe she was right in a different Spanish dialect. We went to a Spanish language cafe so I could practice, and I wanted to order hot chocolate, but I wasn't sure of the word for it. I was about to get out my phone to check, but Mary said, "It's chocolate gaseosa." That didn't sound right, but my Spanish is still beginner level, and the waiter was coming, so I went with it. The waiter looked completely confused and kind of amused, and we muddled through a conversation where we finally worked out what I actually wanted. Looked up what Mary had told me, and she told me to say fizzy chocolate for some reason. There's a bunch of other examples I won't get into because this post is already long. What I want to ask is, how do I bring this up with her? I don't want to fight about it, but the few times I've pointed out that she's not being truthful or I don't agree with what she's saying, she's blown me off and been very dismissive. And now in the comments, you need to realize that she is not your friend. She isn't kind and caring, she's continually demeaning you in some way to make herself seem better. Stop participating in this relationship. I think she probably needs to put others down to feel better about herself, or she's just a cow. Either way, no true friend would do that. Distance yourself. That will eventually make you feel awful about yourself and build up resentment to her. That doesn't sound like a best friend. Why would you want to stay friends with someone like that? A true friend wouldn't do that to you. If you already brought it up to her and she brushed you off, she probably will do the same. And OP says, this post makes her sound like a huge asshole, but she honestly generally isn't like this, and it's a recent development. If she's truly a good friend, you should be able to discuss it head on. Ask her if something has happened recently because she is constantly gaslighting and undermining you. If she's able to address it, maybe you can save your friendship. But if she isn't, I would put some space between you. I'm sorry, she's not your friend. She's got issues, and it makes her feel good to demean you. Also, is chocolate caliente the right phrase? Your commitment to study language is admirable. Now go out and find some new friends, whatever language they speak, as long as they're nice to you. And OP replies, yes, El chocolate caliente is right. At least in Castilian Spanish, which is what I'm learning, it's right. At least I know that now, I guess. And now, onto the update. Not too sure how many are interested in an update, but I thought that I'd give one anyway. Firstly, thank you to everyone who offered advice and feedback on my original post. To have confirmation that I wasn't overreacting meant a lot to me. I talked to Mary a few hours ago, and long story short, I gave her the same examples that I gave Reddit, plus a few more, and said that the way that she's been acting recently has made me feel humiliated, stupid, and small, and that since she's my friend, I was sure that that's not how she would want me to feel, so I was letting her know so we could talk it out and fix it. At first, she was very dismissive again, and said that I was making a big deal out of nothing. Ordinarily, I would have dropped it here, but after seeing how many people on Reddit agreed that her behavior was unacceptable, I decided to stick to my point. I asked her what she would want me to do if I made her feel bad about herself. Her reaction was interesting. She started getting emotional and said that she had been picking on me on purpose as a way to test boundaries in a safe way. A bit of backstory. Before me, Mary spent her teenage years in a very toxic frenemy-type friendship where she was the victim and her friend was the bully. It screwed with her self-esteem a lot, and in the first year of our friendship, I did have to keep reminding her that she didn't have to meekly agree to everything that I said, and that I wasn't going to hate her if she disagreed with me about where we go to eat or what movie to go see. Her family are also not very nice people, and she has a bad relationship with her parents. Her mother is very homophobic, and even more transphobic, and Mary identifies as queer. I'm not taking Mary's word for any of this. I knew her old friend, and I've met her mum, and they are both shitty. According to Mary, I've been the only person in her life who she trusts not to dump her or get aggressive if she, in her own words, pushes back. So she started trying to test just how much she could push me. She said she wanted to see how much I cared about her as an affirmation that someone in her life did care for her unconditionally. At first, I was sympathetic because I understand what it's like to feel like nobody has your back and nobody really loves you. But after our conversation, I've been thinking about it more, and I've been starting to feel more and more angry. There's a difference between pushing boundaries and being straight up cruel to someone. Pushing boundaries is a toddler refusing to eat their veggies to see if dad will let him get away with it. Not a 27-year-old woman lying to her friend that she pissed on the floor to intentionally humiliate her. I don't see why I should have to be treated like crap to make up for Mary's parents and former friends being assholes. So that's where I am now. I still care about Mary, she's still important to me, but I'm rethinking how much importance I want to put on our friendship and how much time I'll spend with her going forward. Maybe that proves her right that our friendship isn't unconditional, but I don't want to be the doormat that she wipes her feet on when they feel mucky. And now in the comments, no one's love is unconditional because it would require there being no boundaries. Boundaries are good and healthy, and loving someone also doesn't require accepting specific types of treatment or forgiving them. I think her excuse that she's testing you is BS. Whether subconscious or not, she wanted to hurt you. Maybe because she doesn't feel she deserves the type of friendship you two have, maybe jealousy over something else. It doesn't really matter the why, it matters that she did it. I'd personally take a massive step away from her. You might, in time, feel you can resolve it if she does work on changing, but there's no need to subject yourself to smoothing things over for her sake, or worse, more of this shitty behavior. So, she went from being bullied to becoming a bully. That's pathetic. Humiliating your friend to see how unconditional the friendship is toxic. It says a lot about her as a person, and people like her are draining and selfish. I'm glad you confronted her, and now it's time to distance yourself. Realize she will turn the situationship and make herself the victim. Good on you for knowing your worth and knowing when to walk away. That takes strength. It's not gaslighting, it's gaseosa. Akio bum. Mary's an idiot. Every friendship is conditional, every relationship, be it parent, child, romantic, friendship, everything is conditional. It sounds to me like neither Mary nor the OP understand what unconditional love is. Which is not surprising, given Mary's upbringing and OP's apparent crippling insecurity. Unconditional love means that you pursue the other person's best interest. It means you continue to love them and wish the best for them even when you have to distance yourself from bad behavior. Because it is not in anyone's best interest to allow people to behave badly. It means that you hope for the best and would pursue reconciliation if possible. Unconditional love does not mean having zero boundaries or accepting abuse. You see this a lot in parents of people who have committed horrible crimes. They still love their children, but they can't deny their children's crimes. It's human nature to love and care for your offspring. In general, obviously it's not universal because people suck, so I always feel bad for the parents in these situations, because it's a no-win. I'm not counting parents who aid and abet their kids. That's shitty behavior depending on the crime. It means that you hope for the best and would pursue reconciliation if possible. It means we're here for you when you're ready to get better, not we are here to enable you. There is no magical version of unconditional love which includes being abused. There is nothing noble in martyrdom. Mary doesn't understand that. Mary very likely sees all the abuse that she put up with as a sign that she loves more deeply and fully than other people. It's not. She doesn't. She's not special. She's a victim of abuse perpetrating a cycle and is just as capable of being the exact abuser who abused her. But that's scary to accept and to admit. It's easier to try and find meaning and purpose in her damage. Her damage has to amount to something for it to be good damage, but it's not. There is no such thing. She went through something awful, and now her sense of normal is broken, or completely undeveloped, and now she has to do the back-breaking labor of healing from it, and stopping herself from continuing it, and it's never fair. It never has a higher meaning. It's just abuse, and it's just reality. Sometimes, people just literally change too. For extreme examples, you can get a brain tumor or a traumatic brain injury that strongly changes your personality. One famous example was the UT sniper who killed 17 people, including his family. He was sure that there was something physically wrong with his brain because he couldn't explain his violent impulses, and when they did the autopsy, they found that he had a tumor in just the place that might cause a person to become violent. It is much more common, though, that people change because of psychological problems or extreme stress. Or they were just hiding their true self and then stopped hiding it. And that's where I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.